We're going to call the meeting to order. This is a public hearing. Excuse me. It is a budget workshop. Last night was a public hearing. So tonight we're going to be talking about general government and finance, debt, fringe benefits, liability insurance, transfers to other funds and all other budgets, as well as the library. So I'm going to turn the camera over to Tom Robinson, and he will proceed with the budget book. Good evening, Tom.
Hello all. So we're going to start on page number 19 of the budget. That is your Board of Selectmen budget for the fiscal year we are working on here, fiscal year 22. There is no increase in this proposed budget. In page 21, it's the first select woman's budget. There is an increase of 1.07, which is the increase in salary of the assistant. Page 23, Ethics Commission. We have no change in this budget.
Just a sound check. Is everything coming through okay, Nick?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
In page 25, which is the probate court, there is an 18% budget increase, and that is due to the space requirements due to COVID. So there was additional space that was required, and that's what occurred there. Page 27, which is election supplies. I'm sorry, elections. That was a decrease of 6.2%, where we have some, more or less, where the decrease was in election worker stipends, as we anticipate a few less workers with not being a presidential election, but there are some potential increases in the minimum wage rates, so that will offset some of that savings. So that's a decrease of 6.2%. The finance department budget is an increase in 2.8%. That's more or less for the salaries for the union workers and non-union, and some slight expected increase in service contracts for payroll services and finance management system service contracts. In the page 31, which is the collector of revenue, there was a change in revenue, collector of revenue, and this is a union position at a scaled level. So there's a change there in the salary, and there's a reduction of 8.31. The increase in the conference meeting dues is related to new requirements that are out there for the collectors of revenue for continued professional education. And so there is a needed increase in that to meet those objectives. Page 33 is the assessor's budget. This has an increase for salaries, and then it does have contractual increases for the service contracts for the items that are for QDS and the various software solutions for the assessor's department. 35 is the Board of Assessment Appeals. It's a reval year, so the amounts here are for stipulated amounts for the stipends that are based on a revaluation year. Page 37 was the town council. There was, at this point, there's no change in the expected budget for this matter. Try to achieve all the legal matters within those dollars. Page 39 is the town budget. This has the increase for the union worker and the town clerk, and all other items within this budget remain the same. The central services, this is where we buy all of our products and supplies for all departments. We buy the postage for the majority of all departments here, advertising, printings, publications, all things that we share amongst. Our copier fleet is in this. The items where we do all our testing for new employees, for drug testing, for random required testings, and data supplies. So in this budget, there's a minor decrease of 2.43. The technology budget has a 2.87 increase. In this budget, there are 2 people full-time budgeted, and we do have overtime for the IT coordinator, as well as sometimes these other staff. And also in the licensing and services, there was an expected increase, and that was a recommendation from our level 3 consultant related to an upgraded improvement for antivirus software. And that is expected to have a $3,000 increase in software. Let's see, that's those items. On the fire department, there's a 1.56% increase. In this budget, they have the stipends are in the 3rd line, the same dollar amount there, the $1,600 per member. It also has in the stipends for the various, the chief and the deputy chief and a few of the other members that are in there. And then in addition to that, there's an increase in licensing software. And this was due to the improvements that were required to the incident response software. So that does occur. And you'll see that in line 31008. And really, there's no other significant changes in that line, in that budget. The fire marshal budget on page 47 has no increase. Same flat budget there. On page 49, we have the emergency dispatch budget. This is our dispatch contract. This is currently in negotiations. So we're hopefully we'll get this within a 3% increase. That's how it has been in the past. But this is something that Susan and the team will be working on to get negotiated. This is also Valley Shore is in this number, and the monitoring for all of the buildings in town for the fire service monitoring. Police department, there's a 3.75% increase in this budget. And the majority of the items they come in twofold of reasons for the increase. There's a slight increase for the private duty, but that can change based on what is expected based on the projects, and that can go increase and fluctuate, but there is an offsetting or a revenue source of this that offsets kind of this expense that's in the revenue section. So that's a nice generation of revenue. But the 2 main items were the conversion to NextGen, which was more or less required from the state to improve the reporting system. So that is licensing software you see goes up. The previous system was a little less expensive, and the NextGen solution annually is $11,450 itself, plus other licensing software solutions for 3 other softwares that we have there. Going to the conference meetings and dues, you see an increase of $3,000. The increase in this is related to the training based on new laws and regulations of the police accountability. And when you go down into the next area, which is cruiser support, with the conversion to NextGen, there was some of the items where there was a solution called Captain, which no longer is needed, but there is a solution called NetMotion, which is required, and then a related data plan for that. So that line item becomes the NetMotion contract and the data plan. Examinations services, would be for expected new hirings related to potential people that would leave. There's an expectation possibly there. And then also there's various evaluations from psych evaluations that are possibly required based on the police accountability law. Throughout the budget, we have not locked in gas or diesel, so this is our best estimate. We do not have those contracted as of yet. Page 53 is our emergency management budget, and slight decrease in this budget, and no really major change there. There is a grant that brings in and covers and takes in some of the monies in this budget. The building department makes up the building official, and then also one of the full-time assistant, half of the full-time assistant in this budget, and the other is in the planning budget. There's a little bit of a decrease here in gas and diesel, and a decrease in the conference meetings and dues line. So then the pages 57 to 71 will all be talked about next time. So we're moving to page 73, which is the planning department. So there was some shifting here that Susan mentioned yesterday, and one of those is making the position for the planner position. That'll be a 35-hour position, and then the other half of the administrative assistant is in this line item. So that's why you see the removal of the part-time position, because both positions would be considered full-time. There's a slight drop in. There was a drop in the plan consultant. I believe some of that was due to the way that they were anticipating to do part of the POCD renewal yearly that didn't come to play. So that never really came through. At one point we were thinking of a $2,000 to $3,000 annual renewal to save funding from the previous, to save some funding when we do the based upon the required schedule of this, but that didn't work out as planned. Page 75 is the zoning enforcement. So this year, the zoning enforcement officer has been working more hours than had been budgeted. And that was due to, there was a part-time position within the planning department. Previously, there was 2 part-time positions in the previous budget. And this year, there was the second position had not been filled. So therefore, there was a need for more workers. So in the zoning enforcement budget, the zoning enforcement officer did more work. So in this budget, we have budgeted 24 hours for this individual. I think there is potential a need for additional hours in that, and that will have to be continually evaluated as the year progresses. But that is a pretty substantial increase from the previous amount of hours that were budgeted in fiscal year 21. Planning and Zoning Commission, which is page 77. There's a 3.7% decrease, and this was just more or less a cut to the court transcriptions. That's an as needed, is needed as required. If that did become required, it probably would likely exceed that money. So, but that's one of those ones that, it'll have to be investigated when it was needed. And that'll be the same answer for any of the cuts to court transcriptions. It was just a reduction to get to the budget numbers that we felt needed, but those would have to be investigated when required. Page 79 was the Board of Appeals. That was a decrease of 28%, and it's court transcriptions. It's quite a small budget, so therefore the drop there is a large percentage. Inland and Wetland Commissions, page 81. That's a 6.1% decrease, and that was a slight decrease into conference meetings and dues, and a slight decrease in the board clerk position. Other than that, everything remains the same. There's still, the enforcement officer is still contracted, and that's how that budget. And then we still have the coastal, the CT Coastal Conservation District fee. Page 83, the Conservation Commission. There's an 8% decrease in this budget, and that was related to conference meetings and dues of $50, which shows an 8% decrease. Page 85, which is the Economic Development Commission. There is no change to this budget in this year. Page 87, the Capital Commission. There is no change to the budget here, and I think that commission just kind of invigorated and got reactivated. So there could possibly be some expenses in that in the future. Page 89, which is the Chatham Health District. As you know, they've been fighting through the COVID-19 pandemic and working diligently, and with that came a 4.3% increase in their needed fees. So that was our allocated amount based on the per capita rate for us. 91, no budget. 93 is a service contract budget. There's a decrease in this budget by 0.82%. The first selectman did add back the contribution to the Brownstone Quorum. The community health center had been had been removed, and that one they hadn't. That's been in the budget for a few years now, and they had never requested the funds. And we tried to reach out, but it was hard to get to a contact person there. So, in this budget, it's had been removed. Overall, it's a $500 decrease. On page 95, there is an effort here to bring a full-time senior center director into this mix. So you'll have a administrative assistant and a full-time director, and that's why you see the increase in this budget for the dollar value, for the percentage size. Currently, there had been as an additional amount of monies that were provided to the, I guess it was the acting director there. And in this instance, there was a full-time director is in this budget due to the needs that were generated from COVID. There also was in the service contract line, there was a grant provided us an ability to acquire an electronic sign-in system, and that is getting implemented as we go through this process. And there is a annual fee to that for the service contract, which is included within the service contract line, as well as HVAC, elevators, fire protection, and a few other things. That's more or less that's the increase into there. We lowered a little bit with the electricity. We expect it to kind of go back to the 19 levels with expected return of services and activities within the senior center. Page 97 is the municipal agent of the elderly, and there is a related grant that comes in from the it's a dial-a-ride grant, and it comes in 3 times a year, and there's the base. It allows us to provide services to the various. We drive various people to various events, outings, doctor appointments, things of that nature. And it's a good service for the elderly as well as other people within the community. And that's what that budget, there's no change. Portland Library, we have a 0.94 increase to this budget. There was a move of one of the part-time positions was moved to a full-time position, and one part-time position was not refilled during this review. One of the retirees that was not filled in that because it was moved up to full-time. And there was an increase in data processing. That's with the Connect, the library connection. That's usually a fee that's based on our consortium to be a component of that. So that's a contractual, as well as just some data processing components to that. We feel that there's a possibility of a savings in electricity. So there was a decrease there. Some of the measures that were put in, there was energy measures that were done. There were improvements made. We had some construction improvements, and then there was energy savings measures for lighting that were put in. So we're hoping that those measures will take place. Well, they did take place, but we'll make those savings occur. Fringe benefits. This was up 3.22%. We have our contributions to this are 6% for the defined contribution plan. So the participants put in 6%, we put in 6%. One of the areas where you see somewhat of an increase, and it had an effect on the town side as well as the Board of Ed, was the town pension contribution for the defined benefit plan. There was a considerable required increase in that number, and that had about a $70,000 increase effect in this budget. And that we had some early retirements that were part of that, and just some of the asset valuations during that year resulted in a higher required contribution. So that was we noticed that in this budget. We did complete our other post-employment benefit actual evaluation for fiscal year 21 to see a slight decrease in the collective bargaining amount there. And we do have our workers' comp amounts within here. We have had a slight decrease, and we provided that by KERMA. We had a slight rate drop, so that's a positive. And we, as Susan mentioned yesterday, we did some negotiations with medical, and in this tough time during COVID, we had a rate cap with the renewal of last year of 15%, and we've got, we were able to get it to a 7.5% increase in this medical coverage, and so that is what we have there. We had some slight increases in our life and disability, and that's just the timing of the renewals. But those were strong renewals with reasonable increases there. Risk management. So we have about a 3% increase overall in our areas for that at 3.25 in the global number here. And there's a few of the items that are up for renewal. The airline trail environmental is up for renewal, so we'll need to see that when that quote comes in. The excess liability is is up for renewal, and they provided us with a figure for that. Kerma has not, so we're using our best estimate. They do expect an increase, a rather substantial increase in the excess liability, and that's due to just the changes in the markets and the carriers of the excess liability, and the underwriting of that. So we are working with Kerma and working with them to get those quotes, and that's within the numbers that are in this number that we do have expected. That's our expected increase, is at 3.25%. One of the main items that did not make the budget cut yet was a cyber coverage. Used to be within our policy. It was something that Kerma had as accessible to all their members. And in this year, they decided that based on many of the claims throughout the country, as well as in their pool, that was not a business approach that they could do any longer. And they did not incorporate it. They actually removed it from their policy. So a few days before we were issuing this, we did receive a potential estimate. So for a specific amount of coverage, limit coverage with a $25,000 deductible, a fee would be around $21,000. And if we were to double this specific amount of limit of coverage with a $25,000 deductible, we need to add a $30,000 budget, $33,000 to this budget. So there is it's a pretty substantial number that has come in that, you know, we could like your input during deliberations, but like to add to this budget so that we do have coverage they are with high deductibles, but that is that style of coverage. So it's for one level limit, it would be around a $21,000 number, and for a second level, doubling that amount of coverage, it'd be around a $33,000 number. So that could be shared amongst the town and the board. It could be paid by the town, you know, and that's something where, you know, that could be talked about. Do you have anything to add there? On page 105, page 105 is debt service. So the main debt service on the bonds and the principals, we have the 2012 refunding that's still ongoing. That was a Board of Ed issuance. And we have the 2018 obligation for the town $10 million bond. We have that obligation going on. For the capital lease, we have our current multi-year lease from fiscal year 2018, which is a 5 of 6 annual payments. We're in the 5th year of that. And then in this lease, in this budget, we do have a capital lease estimate included in the budget. And that lease was, for a principal payment side of it, it was a $1.5 million lease. And it's over a 7-year payment structure was the anticipation. And in that anticipation, there's 2 sets of schedules, but it comes into seven payments. And the way that it was structured was that the first year would be, we pay principal and interest on the Chromebook purchase using a 4-year schedule. And then the remainder of the equipment would be interest only in year 1, and then be principal and interest for the following 6 years. So that is the lease payment for the year, the anticipated, and this is all anticipated as we don't know the lease interest rates or those factors. The proposed was a $90,455 in this year. Then the way in fiscal year 23 to 25, the combined payment would be $285,400 roughly. And then from fiscal year 26 to 2028, through those years, it would be a about $208,450 payment. So that's how that would be structured, as we have some debt in the 2012 refunding being removed after fiscal year 22. So within fiscal year 23, the debt, instead of being the 960, it drops to 470. So therefore, in the next year, the 285 would kind of be able to fit into that the hole created by the 490,000 drop within the 2012 refunding. And then in the subsequent year of that, the 2018 lease would fall off, creating a decrease there of the 272. So that is what is in this in this budget. We have the $1.5 million capital lease. The first year is interest only on all other equipment other than Chromebooks. Chromebooks are paid with a principal and interest payment in the first year, and then also in the for the Chromebooks, they will be paid off within a 4-year cycle within this 7-year lease. Page 107. Page 107 is the inter-fund transfers. You need to start your other meeting.
We can finish up with the transfers. And then
Okay, the inter-fund transfers. Within the inter-fund transfers, you have the transfers from animal control, and we can go through that. Youth service, building maintenance, the resource recovery fund, and then in other is the $58,750 for the water fund for the hydrant usage, and $15,000 to go into the landfill closure. Landfill closure fund is it monitors it's environmental monitoring for the landfill, and then subsequently there is Park and Rec has a $230,000 transfer, and then open space is brought back into the mix this year, as that's based on the ordinance, and capital has a $240,000. 184 of that is from the body cams and dash. We have estimated possibly 30,000 for a grant reimbursement on that, and then which could be more, but that's the estimate that we've utilized. And then 56,000 for the townwide, which is the backup appliance that we need to acquire every 4 years. The contingency is no change. So the only thing we'll have to do is.
we'll go to the other meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
So we'll call for a motion to recess this workshop. Is there a motion to recess? Because we can go back and finish up with the other funds once we are completed with our regularly scheduled meeting. Is there a motion to go into a recess? Oh dear, I can't hear.
I just unmuted Jim.
Okay. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we go into recess.
Okay, is there a second? Seconded by Rick. All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Raise your hand, please. Okay, thank you. And we will reopen the workshop and go back to Tom Robbins.
All right, thank you. We had more or less finished up the general fund. So we were moving on to page 119, which was animal control. Next week works, so we'll do the water and sewer funds with public works. So animal control is a tricky budget. Middletown left during the middle of this year. in the budget for 20, it was kind of decided there during the last year's budget that they would let's lay off the animal control officer in the second half of fiscal year 21. So that really didn't happen. So we're working through some items with this fiscal year, but next fiscal year, we have budgeted a $6,000 rental revenue that is unknown right now. That's anticipated of some usage of that facility. So I know Susan's been working hard trying to come up with some type of property rental there. The remainder of the fund is transferred. There's a few things from sale of dog licenses and surcharges and some miscellaneous donations, but the majority of the remainder of that fund would come from the transfer in. So that being said, if you move to 120, for the payroll goes up, but because in 21, you more or less cut the second half of the position, it's really, this is a 30-hour position. So in theory, for July, the animal control officer would have to be, I guess, negotiated down to a 30-hour position. So that would be something that would have to be worked out with the unions. Part-time payroll, assuming that less animals are there should be less nights and weekends, is kind of what the part-time payroll's for. But that's all contingent upon if you have more, somebody is there renting it, then that's the expense will be high, probably go up. So, there's an estimate of $1,500. That's, not very many hours. Overtime, as you can see in 20, person did about $8,000 worth, and we're doing 2,500 again, assuming less animals, hopefully less overtime. Medical was a savings because the individual is no longer taking medical with us. So there was a savings there. Other cuts were made to the budget, just more as an economical cut due to the lack of revenue. So, the budget will have to be modified, will have to be reviewed, and hopefully some rental income will come in. So the next budget was budget page 124, which was youth service. Youth service was shut down this year with relation to the Kids Blast. They weren't, the schools weren't able to transport students back and forth, so that they set up some other company. I believe the YMCA came in to run the program. So this program was not run. With some potential staffing modifications, there's a consideration of moving this over. That program was moved over to the Park and Rec department. So this is made up. This fund needs to be it'll be reassessed with the staff and the working, and determine if some programmatic revenue can come in. Otherwise, there's a good grant that comes in on this program, as well as income from the individual that's a consultant, a therapist, a consultant that brings in some revenue. In this instance, there was the first selectwoman put a use of fund balance in this budget, which is not something we normally do, but in this to utilize some of the fund balance that was in this budget that was fairly strong fund balance. We utilized 40,000 of that to balance this budget. The temporary payroll was assuming that there was maybe one person that would be able to help the director. The remainder of that temporary payroll was moved over to the Park and Rec. The remainder of the expenses here
are more or less the same. So it's as the CRC and the ECC consulting would hopefully still continue on and be as that those individuals that do those components are helpful to the community and the youth of the town. Pages so that actually is the last of the budgets that we would talk about tonight, because the remainder of them, resource recovery, building maintenance, and park and rec are all on the next budget. One other thing I can just point you to, so that you do see it on page 5 of the budget. That kind of does list your general fund revenue. So it starts with the estimated current taxes, from prior year taxes, interest and liens and supplements, and then into the educational cost sharing, which we anticipate getting from the state, into some of the state grants that the governor has put in to the budget, as well as the grant for the bus grant that we spoke about earlier from Dial-A-Ride. That's within 214, account number 214 on page 5. Interest income is very, very low. Rates are very low from every institution that we have, and with STIF is low. So that's a hard one to come by. We're hoping that property rental stays strong, with Oak Hill, continuing their program, and then the Brownstone Exploration Park hopefully having a strong year. And the estimates of the town clerk's office has been able to provide some strong estimates on revenue, with hopefully some enhancements there. So those are some positives. As we talked about, 00324, which was police private duty. There's a private duty expense, and then this is the revenue that generates from that expense. The building permits, again, we're hoping that Brainerd Place comes in, so that money is, as you see the disconnect between actual and estimate, is the anticipation, hopefully, of the Brainerd Place permit fees coming in. We don't anticipate additional sale of property in this next fiscal year, so it was budgeted in this fiscal year. So I just wanted to show you those components, and that's those are the items that were on tonight's budget workshop, and the funds that were on tonight's budget workshop. The next weeks would be Public Works and their related funds, and then Park and Rec, and the Capital Fund and Education, which Dr. Britton went through yesterday.
Are there any questions or items for next time that you would like us to have available? If not, I'm going to entertain a motion to adjourn. But before we do that, I will remind everyone that Tuesday, March 23, we will be meeting again at 7 o'clock on Zoom A for Board of Education, Public Works, and other related funds, grounds maintenance, Parks and Recreation, and long-range capital.
Susan, can I,
So,
before we
yeah,
adjourn,
go ahead, Fred.
is how to anticipate the money that I guess we're going to be getting from the federal program, the Recovery Act. I forgot the name of it.
American Rescue Plan.
There you go, American Rescue Plan. Now, are we going to be able to use any of that revenue in this budget?
Well, it's something that we're beginning to understand a little better as we move ahead here. I think there are some items that we might be able to, but I'm going to have to get some clarification on that, Rick. I did send a public policy email to everyone from CCM, and there is an area there where you can click and it'll show you what they identify as related expenses.
Right.
But it's a little hard to understand the translation of that. So,
I saw that.
yeah, I'm hoping that either CCM or maybe some directives will come from either the state or the federal government to help us with that. I mean, I certainly hope we'll be able to, particularly for areas that would be related to COVID and our recovery, some of the lost revenue that we have experienced. And that makes a difference going forward. I mean, Brownstone is an example. While we got a decent amount of money last summer, Rick, there was a substantial amount that we did not get. And it was because of COVID and also the storm.
Yeah.
But we don't have any way to recover that because of the storm, but we would have a way to recover it because of the COVID relationship there. Some of the other items that they talk about is capital with sewer and water, and also broadband. They talk about that. And they also talk a little bit about some other areas that might be related to the work that we're doing. But we'll have to do some study on that. It's a good question.
Okay.
Tom, do you want to add to that at all?
No, I mean, we just really need to we need to obtain guidance on what the monies are able to be used on. Are there restrictions? Are there specific reporting requirements? Are those funds that are utilized outside the general fund for projects? I mean, I believe it seems like so far that there was some specific trackings that you had to do on the funds and uses. So I mean, I think it's very early when the release of the funds, and I know we need to get the guidance on what those funds are for and how we best utilize them. Whether if it's for specific items that have been within the capital plan or specific areas that are allowed. But it's hard to determine right now to see what's there without the usage and what the federal government's going to require for reporting of those expenditures back for support.
Well, it'd be nice to not have to have a close to 4% increase, because I just think that everybody's, the taxpayers have felt the pain too this year. So whatever we can use some of that money to help balance our budget better, that would be great. I'd be up for exploring that anyway.
And certainly one of the big unanticipated expenditures are for the cameras for the police department. I mean, that's $180,000.
Yeah.
Which is substantial. And that's what brings the mill rate over the one. If we didn't have that would be a lot more palatable, shall we say, in terms of being able to tweak some other things.
Yeah, well, I know that was kind of a knee-jerk reaction too when they passed that, but
we're a small department, and we haven't had cameras. Many departments already have them, Rick, but we don't. With 12 officers, we haven't really been able to afford to have them. And we still can't. I mean, but we will because we have to. It's part of the law. We will comply. But it's a challenge. And I'm hopeful that maybe the state will be able to find more reimbursement for that project as well. They're talking about it.
That'd be nice. Yeah.
It's still a little early in the budget season, but, you know, last year we went a little bit later, if you'll recall. I don't know that we'll be able to do quite that late this year because it will go to referendum in May. But it certainly would allow us to know what the state is doing and maybe get some more clarification on this American Rescue Plan. So we'll do our best.
Okay, I'm sure you will.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll second his motion.
Motion by Jim, second by Ralph. Thank you, everybody. 9:28.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good night.